Hi, Candace.
Hey, Ethan.
How are you?
Doing pretty well. Doing pretty
Great.
well. Managing. How are you?
I'm doing well. Hi, friends. Welcome. Oh, I see some familiar names and faces here in the chat. By the way, if you're just joining us and you haven't used this platform before, if you go to the right side, you'll see these little icons. One of them says chat, and you can click on that and say hi. Oh, it's so nice to see you. And thanks for letting us know where you're logging in from. Let's do a check-in question. What will it be? Let's do what's great about your life right now. I'm going to make you answer this too, Candace. And so feel free to, by the way, so everybody knows there's like 15-second delay. So we'll say something and then you won't hear for 15 seconds. It'll bounce back. But Candace, what's great about your life right now? What are you celebrating in your world?
Wow. I think that's such a great question. And it's something that's just positive. But I'm just gonna say that I'm thankful that I heard a good report today on one of my children, my youngest child. And so I just read the report. It was a really nice update from his teacher. And that just really made my day right now.
I love that. You inspired me. Thank you for that. My celebration, or the thing that's great about my life right now, is my daughter is doing a presentation at school tonight, and I get to go see it after this and see her world, because I feel like I've been kind of, disconnected from it because of the pandemic. So I'm excited to see her world, and she's so excited to share it with us. So it's kind of like an open house, basically. So anyway.
That's so exciting. So
Yeah.
exciting seeing these
So,
young people.
I know. Eleanor's celebrating spring flowers and trees. Kathy got a lot of chocolate for birthday. Happy birthday, Kathy. Devin's celebrating spring. Laura's celebrating 4 healthy sons. Yay for family. And yay,
Yeah.
congrats, Christina, on your daughter's graduation and job offer. Yay. Well, thanks for being with us this evening. This is a college list building session for students and for counselors. And this is particularly focused on students who are domestic, which is to say in the US, who come from low income households. So if that's something that you're interested in, you're in the right place. I'm your co-host today. I'm Ethan, the college essay guy. Candace, you'll meet more in just a minute. I'm going to let her introduce herself. And by way of quick announcements, I want to share with y'all 2 things. First of all, this is news that just came out. The UC system is going to fully cover in-state tuition fees for California residents who are members of federally recognized Native American, American Indian, and Alaska Native tribes starting in fall 2022. So that's something else that I guess I'm celebrating and we're celebrating as a profession. The other thing that's kind of fun is it happens to be National Poetry Month. And I don't know if y'all like poems, but I do like poems a lot. And I wanted to share with y'all a poem. So here's one that I used to read to my students when I was teaching in an actual classroom. And it's called, Did I Miss Anything? And it goes like this. I'm going to share my screen so folks can read along with me. Did I miss anything? Nothing. When we realized you weren't here, we sat with our hands folded on our desks in silence for the full 2 hours. Everything. I gave an exam worth 40% of the grade for this term and assigned some reading due today on which I'm about to hand out a quiz worth 50%. Nothing. None of the content of this course has value or meaning. Take as many days off as you like. Any activities we undertake as a class, I assure you will not matter either to you or me and are without purpose. So I'm going to grab the everything. A few minutes after we began last time, a shaft of light suddenly descended, and an angel or other heavenly being appeared and revealed to us what each woman or man must do to attain divine wisdom in this life and the hereafter. This is the last time the class will meet before we disperse to bring the good news to all people on earth. Nothing. When you're not present, how could something significant occur? Everything. Contained in this classroom is a microcosm of human experience, assembled for you to query and examine and ponder. This is not the only place such an opportunity has been gathered, but it was one place, and you weren't here. There's a way that I think that's like a funny poem, and then there's a way that like he's being like a real wise guy, and I'm like, I don't know if I want my teacher to be talking to me like that, but anyway, that's a fun poem. Happy National Poetry Month, y'all. So here's what we're doing today. We're going to do a very brief intro And Candace is going to start us off with talking about mindset. How do you think about college list building if cost is a concern? She's going to bust some myths that might be in your brains, or if you're a counselor, might be in your students' brains, give you some language around that. And then I'm going to do a little recap of something. Some of you on this session right now were a part of this list building course that we've run over the last couple of weeks. And I'm going to run through a little template that if you're a student, you can use to do your list building, which is to say, put together your college list. And if you're a counselor, it's a sort of DIY, version of this. And we'll follow up with by email that you can use with students to help organize their college lists. I'm also then going to share this really cool resource that Erica from our team at College Essay Guy put together, some lists that you may not know about. When Candace and I saw this, we were like, what? This is so cool. So stay tuned for that. Candace is then going to talk about some state and regional college tuition exchange programs, a little primer on how the FAFSA works and how to interpret the results of that, some advice on scholarshiping strategically, and then I'm going to share a couple more resources, and then we're going to do Q&A. So my intro is I'm the College Essay Guy. I spent a lot of time thinking about helping students get into college. I've got a bunch of free resources on my website. You probably already know me. So I'm going to actually let Candace take the intro time and kick it over to you, let you introduce yourself and share your screen and basically take the mic.
All right. Awesome, Ethan. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. And thank you again, Ethan, for inviting me to be able to be alongside you in this space and to be able to really engage with every one of you that's here with us. I know that there are students and there are other educators and counselors and advisors and maybe just really, I would say anyone that's working with students. And so I really always love being able to be part of these conversations and to be able to, I think, really, align goals with so many other people who are doing this work to help students. And of course, I love working with students and young people and really helping you to attain and achieve your goals after high school and beyond. So, if you would just give me a moment as
While you're sharing your screen, can I share one more thing?
Yes.
Quick plug for this. So I'm going to share, if you are identify as a low-income student or you work with some students who are, we've got something called our Match Sliders program, which you may have heard about, may not, but it's an opportunity to get basically or give essay and application help. So if you're like, ooh, I could use some extra support on this college application process and you're low income, you can apply as a student. Or if you're a counselor and like, ooh, I'd love to get some of my students some more support, just have them sign up. And again, if you're a counselor and you want to volunteer, we'd love to work with you. We'd like to pair at least 500 students with 500 counselors last year. That's what we've done the last couple of years. And we want to keep the party going. So, all right, commercial over, go.
Yes, no, awesome. Thanks for keeping the party going, Ethan. And one last thing, thank you to you all for sharing sort of the good updates that you have or the things that you're thankful for. It's really encouraging, really inspiring, and it just feels good to have some positive information or just positive updates. So to really get into a little bit about me, you all, I'm Candace Mackey. I'm the college counselor at Los Angeles Center for Enriched Studies. It's also known as LACE's Magnet School. We are the first magnet school in LAUSD, which of course is like the second largest district in the country. I've been here now at LACES for about 4 years as a counselor, but overall, a college counselor, overall, I've been doing this work, working with students, working with diverse groups of students for several years now. So I'm going to be approaching my 15th year as a school counselor, and I still love every bit of it, or most of it at least, the parts that involves working with students. I've also am quite active in some of the different associations as it pertains to NACAC and WACAC. These are the, of course, the national and our Western Regional Association for Admissions Counseling. And I do a lot of work working with public school counselors because I am a public school counselor. I work at a Title I school in Los Angeles. And so it just, I'm always encouraged and excited to have these conversations again amongst other colleagues, experts, and of course, working with students. And so I don't want to spend too much more on my background. I have experience teaching in college counseling certification program at UCLA and doing some other work. But again, I do a lot of work with directly working with high school students. And so again, as Ethan mentioned, as we're looking at really servicing our students who are first gen and or low income or both, these are conversations that are real conversations that we're having, and oftentimes, there can be a lot of, I would say, sometimes concerns or just uneasiness when having these conversations with students who come from these backgrounds, and so, when we're thinking about how are we going to best, look at list building and being strategic, right? Really thinking about, okay, if cost is really the priority, we have to be strategic in how, some of the decisions that we're making and how we're doing this research. And so while it may seem impossible to earn a degree without debt or having low debt, we know that many, there's many students who pull this feat off every year. And so, the question is, how do you do this? Where do I find this information? How do I go about really understanding what are the schools that are going to fit my needs, both academically, but of course, financially as well, and choosing those right, and those communities that are going to be supportive. And so it's really done, we know, through a combination of choosing affordable schools and saving money for college and researching, of course, grants and scholarships. So by the time we are done with our webinar, we're hoping that you're coming away with having these resources, both as a student who is either going through this process or you're going to be going through the process, and certainly for all of you who are educators, who are working closely with students, all of us having these resources to best support students in this area. So I thought we could begin with really addressing some of the most common myths and thoughts around paying for college. I think there's a big misconception about financial aid process and thinking that the sticker price of college is what you pay, and that you'll graduate, with a huge student loan bill. So this is a myth that I am constantly having to address and dispel with my families and with my students. And this is something that we know that sticker price is not what you pay. It goes beyond that. Right. And that's something that we will talk more about. What does that look like? What does it look like? And how do you go beyond understanding really what exactly what you're going to pay for college beyond what's just listed on the college website or in the brochures, the pamphlets, and what you see as face value. Also, another myth to dispel, this is a quite common one, again, having lots of conversations around this, is that private colleges are too expensive to even consider. And so with that, public universities oftentimes do have that reputation of being the cheapest option. And while sometimes they are the cheaper option out of the two, it doesn't necessarily mean just because it's a public school that it's going to be cheaper, or that it's a private school, it's going to be more expensive. In fact, according to the National Association of College and University Business Officers, in 2021, undergraduates at private universities receive an average tuition discount of about 48%. So again, we understand and that we know, those of us who are doing this work, right? We understand that just because it's a private school, it doesn't mean that it's going to cost more than what a public school can offer. And that's typically because private institutions usually offer more grants and scholarships, oftentimes more so than public schools do. So this is a myth, again, that is something that I am frequently having to have discussions about and dispel. And this is not even from just my first gen or low income students, but also I would say even from my, middle class families or even some of my families that are well-to-do. It's just sort of a general myth that we hear out there. And I think the third myth, and this is probably the number one myth that I hear the most from students and families, is that I can't afford to go to college out of state. I'm here in California. And while we have lots of college options and really great college options here in the state of California, we know that there's so many other colleges that are equally great that are outside of California and just across the country. And so this is a myth that I am continuously having to dispel. And I think, if anything, just sort of redirect those conversations, reframe those conversations to students and families, and really inform them that many states have programs that allow residents to attend universities in another state without having to pay out-of-state tuition. Again, I'm in California, and we have a tuition exchange program that is called the Western Undergrad Exchange Program. And again, these programs are offered really throughout the country. And so they are regional programs that are offered where students can pay no more than 150% of that institution's resident tuition rate. So these are programs that are oftentimes, I would say, not really, a lot of families, students and families may not be as informed. And those of you who are, if you're a counselor or college counselor or independent educational consultant, or, you're a CBO and just work with students, some of you may know, or a lot of you may know these programs, but there's many students and families who are just not aware. And so these programs, again, they exist all across the country. And I would say, depending on where you're located geographically within our country, within the United States, these economic out-of-state tuition options exist. And there's just 4 things that you're going to want to really keep in mind when you're looking at these programs as a potential option. And that's really checking your eligibility status, because each of these programs, they're partnerships. They're universities that are located in different states, and they have partnerships. And so you're going to want to make sure that you meet the eligibility requirements based on your geographical region, state, or territory, and that you are applying to a participating school within that sort of program, exchange program. Also, you're going to want to make sure that you're checking these schools and checking the degrees, because within each of these programs, there are certain degrees that are eligible and certain degrees or majors that are not. So this is really good for you, both students and even us as counselors, or those of us adults working with students, for us to be able to understand that not every single major applies to these programs. Also, for students, making sure that you're meeting the school's requirement that's part of this program. So institutions may have varying minimum GPA requirements that's expected. Again, looking at what are the majors that qualify under this program. If there are early application deadlines, that's of course incredibly important. Always want to make sure you're staying on top of those deadlines. And so, again, reviewing the website and really understanding what are those requirements within those programs. And last, I would say, just seeing if some of these programs do require that students apply directly to the school. And so with that, they may not allow students to, let's say, maybe apply through the Common App or some other platform. They may have their own specific requirements as to how a student would apply. So the good news is that, these programs are available, again, as I mentioned, they're available across the country, but they're also available for transfer students as well. So if this is something that you'd want to consider, perhaps maybe going to community college first and then transferring, these are options that are still available. So again, these are oftentimes, I would say, this would be more underutilized than what they should be, but really fantastic economic option for many students. And so now I thought I would, talk and sort of transition more into, of course, when we're looking at, what are the things that we need to be aware of, right? Of course, as it pertains to cost, we're looking at different resources. We're looking at different programs that offer that can be economical. But of course, we cannot remember, or we cannot forget, and we have to prioritize the importance of the FAFSA and really understanding and knowing how the FAFSA works, right? And so the FAFSA, I'm going to think this is a really good time at this point to transition over to our college paying guide.
Ooh, folks may not even know about. Can I say 2 words on the context for that while you're switching the screen over?
Yes.
Awesome. What you're about to see is called the Paying for College Guide, and everybody's going to get access to it. We're going to follow up with links via email. But this is a guide that was put together by Amanda Miller, who's an amazing counselor. She calls herself she calls herself the counselor lady, but she's like the financial aid lady. And actually, sorry, I think somebody else is officially the financial aid lady, but she put together this really comprehensive guide. We're not going to go through the whole thing right now, but Candace is going to guide you through just this part 3, which is the FAFSA. And anyway, but just everybody who's going to start asking in the chat, you will get access to this. Don't worry.
Yeah, so this is a fantastic guide, you all, with regard to really covering lots of details regarding the FAFSA application, which we know it stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. So this is obviously a free application. And on this site, it really lays out exactly what FAFSA represents. And how it covers information with regard to the difference of need-based aid and understanding how FAFSA is really being used. It also is going over the federal formula that is used to determine a family's EFC versus the cost of attendance, and different examples of what students could expect to see as it pertains to their parent, guardian, caregiver situation. So again, it's very, very detailed, and it really walks students through like some of the first steps that you need to do, of course, with creating an FSA ID. That's the first step that you have to do with filling out FAFSA. And of course, when you're, of course, filling out FAFSAs, it's important to make sure that you are prepared, because there's a lot of information. There's questions that are going to be asked, and there's information that students should have readily available to be able to answer these questions. So it starts with the FAFSA 3.0, and then again, it just talks more about how to FAFSA, right? So with this, again, it's really talking about what are the things that you need to do to get ready and prepared. And what I really like about this particular page is that it really provides or gives students and families and educators, it gives us some of the top mistakes that are often made by students or by parents when they're completing the FAFSA application. So for an example, I'll scroll up here. It says the rookie number mistake number 1 is inputting the wrong year on the form. We know that is a mistake that happens quite frequently, and that students may put the wrong year, and if they do that, it is going to create an issue with their FAFSA application. So, as you're going through this page right here, again, it's allowing students and even educators to see some of these top mistakes that can be avoided, while also going into other information about being able to link your parents' taxes, because of course this is something that is going to have to be submitted. And so again, very detailed information with what to expect as you're completing the FAFSA application and how to properly do it without avoiding making mistakes. And then if you go down to the interpreting your FAFSA results, okay? So we know that this is incredibly important, because you really need to understand, what does all this information mean? So when you're completing your FAFSA application and you submit it, and then you hear from your college, you have a decision, you've been admitted, great. Then you need to understand exactly, after being admitted, what am I going to be expected to pay, right? Having the money talk, understanding what is being expected of you and your family. So this page really highlights all that information, and it does a deep dive understanding the difference between subsidized and unsubsidized loans. So in the event that you have to take out loans to cover the cost of college, it really sort of explains like you would want to do a subsidized loan versus an unsubsidized loan, right? Because a subsidized loan will not accrue interest while you're in college versus a subsidized loan will. Or unsubsidized, excuse me. And it goes again into really understanding. I think oftentimes a lot of students and families don't understand that formula that is used, that federal formula, when it's the cost of attendance and the estimated family contribution, and really what that all means. How is that formula calculated? Is it used equally for all families, which it is federally? Yes, it is. And then really understanding, again, if you're going from sticker price and then the estimated family contribution, then what is your portion? What are you expected to pay? And what does that look like? So this really gives a really detailed explanation of how that EFC is determined. It gives a few different options for students, which is really good. Some scenarios on what you can do if you are looking to get extra money or if you need extra money to fund college. So again, this is a really, really thorough resource that covers all these details. And then I am just going to end with, and I won't spend much time on this, but just so that we're all aware of the college paying guide and how detailed and really helpful it is, it does provide information on the CSS profile, which of course is another application that actually it captures more information than what the FAFSA does. But this is an application that is used by select private universities. And so with the CSS profile, it again goes over very specifically what it is, what it's capturing, and really understanding the difference between federal aid, state aid, and institutional aid. And so with that, again, this will be really, really helpful for both students and for both educators and families who are looking at this and understanding the details of really all aspects as it pertains to both FAFSA, completing the FAFSA application, as it pertains to determining the cost of college in your EFC, and as it pertains to even filling out the CSS profile for those schools who do require the profile. So I am now going to move into something else that I think is really, really exciting, and that you all will really be, at least for me, I'm excited, but I think you all will be really excited about this as well. With Paying for the College Guide, there's something that's called Scholarshiping Strategically. And let me know, Ethan, if you need me to stop or if you needed to jump in. And
yeah, I would love to. I want to go back real quick and talk about the list building part of it, because this is such essential stuff, but I want to give folks context for like the list building part so that students will get in their brains that part will come first and then scholarships later. Could we pause on this and then talk about scholarships in like just a few minutes?
Absolutely. Would you like for me to stop sharing?
That'd be awesome.
Okay.
Thanks. Sweet. All right. So I'm going to jump in real quick, and I want to talk to you all about list building, and I want to do a recap of some of the content and one of the resources that I shared on the larger course. So my turn to screen share. So this is essentially what we put together is this sort of like DIY guide. And I know it's kind of weird the way that the format of this whole, the way the webinar jam works, it like kind of cuts off the top part of this. So apologies, but I'm going to put in a link to this spreadsheet that I'm sharing with y'all. This is what we're calling the DIY guide to list building. And the way it works is step one, when you're trying to build a college list, is to first just figure out what are you looking for. And if y'all end up clicking this link at the top, and I see some of y'all are already on this doc, you'll find this website called Coursava. So for those of you students out there who are trying to figure out, well, what am I even looking for? You can spend 15 minutes. And what you'll get, if you go to Coursera, you can create a free account. You go in and you get a list of things that you're looking for. So step one is to do the card sort on Coursera. And you'll get a bunch of things like hands-on learning. And you basically go, okay, is this a must-have for me? Is this a would be nice, a do not care, or no way? And I may read hands-on learning and be like, I don't even know what that means. What is that? And so I look here and I go, I enjoy learning by doing and prefer hands-on learning in a lab, in the field, or through an internship. And I might go, okay, that's cool. That would be nice. So I click would be nice. And then it forwards you to the next card. What you end up getting once you've gone through this card sort, and like I said, it takes about 15 minutes, is, let me share my screen. I'm going to share a different window. You get this cool PDF that's basically going to give you a sense of what are all those things that you're really interested in when it comes to your school list. So this is my Ethan's must-have list. I want to go to a school that has a creative culture. I want to go to a school that has first-gen student support. I want to go to a school that has a strong sense of community. And so the value of this is that it's going to help you figure out, like I said, in about 15 minutes, all the things you're looking for. So that's step one. And we're not going to do this today just for the sake of time, but I just wanted to walk you through what these steps are. All right. So step one, figure out what you're looking for using Coursera. All right. Step two, let me just go back to this tab. Here we go. Step two, and it's mapped out right here, is to use College Express. This is a website that I love, to learn which colleges match what you're looking for. So let's say, for example, you decide, you know what, I'm looking for schools that are great for film. So you go to College Express. At the top here, you'll see something that says lists and rankings. And you type in film. And you'll see, okay, colleges with quality programs in film studies. Great. I click that, and I see all these schools. American Film Institute, New York Film Academy, Allegheny, Bard College, Barry University. So this is going to give you a big list of potential schools that might be interesting for you. Now, here's what I'm going to suggest you do, and this is what this spreadsheet is for. And if you're allergic to spreadsheets, I apologize. But what you can do is, if you look at the bottom, and you can't really see it because of the way that this platform, there we go. If I scoot it up, you can kind of see it. At the bottom on this second tab, you go to discover your preferences, and it reminds you to just go to Coursera and then put all of your must-haves here. So film, that's the first example. And I want a school that's LGBTQ friendly. So I would take all my must-haves and I would just type them in here. So these are all the things that I'm looking for. And then, like I said, you go to the second tab, you go to College Express, and you take all of your must-haves and you type them across the top here. So film, English, strong sense of community, LGBTQ friendly, and you put all of your must-haves at the top of this. And then you basically, and I know this is kind of tedious and we're working on a way to automate this, so stand by. This is something that I'm actively working on. But what you do is you take all of the schools that are film and you highlight them and you scroll down. And there are a lot, a real lot, a lot of schools that are good for film. And once you get to the bottom, oh my gosh, there's so many. Let's just say that's it. You copy, you hit copy, and you paste them in here. So I'm just going to do this right here. So I'm going to paste all the lists of schools. So what it's going to do is it's going to put all those schools that are great for film in one column. And you spend, it only took me a minute to do that. You spend a minute for each of these lists putting, okay, what are all the schools that are good for the things that I'm interested in? So you go to English, back to College Express, go to lists and rankings, you type in English. What schools are good for that? And, you know, there are a couple different options here, but here's one: colleges with great English, creative writing, literature programs. You click the list, copy it, paste it here. What you're going to end up having in about 15 minutes is a list of lists, essentially. That's why we call this the list of lists here at the bottom. So what you'll have is you'll have a whole bunch of colleges that are good for all the things that you're interested in. Okay. Once you've done that, you're going to want to take a few minutes and scan the list and try and figure out, see which colleges are overlapping. So if you see, for example, this is what that Bard College is overlapping a lot, you know, you can go to your list of lists and use the control find feature and type in Bard College. And for right now, I just have one list, so Bard is only appearing once. But if you type in Bard and you see that it's appearing on, let's say, 6 different lists, you'd be like, oh, okay, Bard is appearing 6 times. And and then you go to Beloit. Whoops, I messed that up. It goes here. And then you go Beloit. How many times is Beloit appearing? And you basically type, okay, that's how many times that's appearing. What this is going to give you is it's going to give you a list of which schools are appearing relatively often. And if it's a school that's good, like let's say Bard is good for like 6 different things that I'm interested in, that's going to probably give me a good sense of a school that's a good one for me to research. So that's going to take you about probably 15 minutes to do. To find the overlaps, it's going to take you another maybe 5-10 minutes. Then the next question is, okay, what can I afford? So you're going to want to filter these by costs. And here's how you do that. I know this is a lot of steps, y'all. And by the way, counselors, if you do this with students, it's probably best to do this in a group environment. That's how I've done this in the past. But you take a school like Bard, and what you're going to Google is the net price calculator. That's this NPC. So you go Bard College net price calculator. And here you go. It's on College Raptor. Now, the net price calculator, you know, one of the things Candace said is like the price that's there is not necessarily the price that you pay. Once you enter all this information in, gender, state of residency, zip code, what's your GPA, what's your test scores if you have it, or you can just click none here. You know, how many people are in your household, you know, what's your parents' marital status, things like this, parents' total income, and you can kind of estimate here. What it's going to give you at the bottom of this, and this takes you about a minute to do, is your estimated family contribution, AKA your EFC. And it's going to have this right at the bottom here. So what I would suggest doing is for these schools that are overlapping, if you type in your information on the net price calculator, you can basically just, it'll come up right here. What is the approximate amount that you will be expected to pay? And it's not perfect. I mean, it's sort of like it'll give you a range, but it'll give you some sense of which schools are likely to be affordable to you and which ones maybe not so much. And so once you have this, then step 5, and this will take you, I mean, it took me like a couple minutes to fill out the net price calculator. So it's going to take you probably a couple minutes per school. But once you have this, you put your schools here, and then you can put in your costs here. You can research and capture your research here, like where is it located and what's the acceptance rate and what are the majors that I'm interested in. And so as you're doing your research, this gives you a place to sort of capture it all. I know that seems like a lot of steps, but let me recap real quick just to give you all a sense of what this is. Step 1, you can use Coursava, which is this free program, to figure out what are your must-haves. You put your must-haves right here. You just type them in. Next step, go to College Express. Once you've got your must-haves, you search for them. Just click lists and rankings, and then you search for them right here. You take the list of schools, you copy and paste it underneath each of these things. Then you look and see which schools are overlapping. If I notice NYU is coming up a lot. By the way, NYU is really expensive. And then which ones are overlapping? You put those here, and then you filter them by cost. In other words, you start to look at which of those schools that are, you know, you look at the net price calculator for each one of these. And that was the thing that I showed you that looks like this. You just Google that, Google net price calculator. And then you type in whatever the number is that comes up here at the bottom. Once you've got that, you should have a pretty good sense of what are these different, you know, what are the costs? And then this is a place you can capture your research. A reason to capture your research all in one place is because once you do this a lot, you're going to have all of these schools swimming through your head, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, what did I research? What school is this? What school is that? If you can keep it there for now, it's a good thing to do. The other thing is when you're writing your why this college essay. So some schools are going to have this essay that's like, why do you want to attend our college? If you've done your research and you've started to capture it here, that's going to help you start thinking about that. In case anybody's wondering, if you're like, wait, how do I get this spreadsheet? I put the link in. We'll follow up with the link as well. But if you go up to File here and you go to Make a Copy, then this will create a copy of this list builder thing in your Google Drive. So you need a Google account to do this, but it'll create a Google. You just hit Make a Copy, and then you title it with your name. So not College Essay Guys DIY List Builder, but Jessica's DIY College List Builder, and that'll create a copy that you can write on. And then you go in here, and all of these where it says examples, you can erase these. You just go here and you just hit delete, and it'll delete, and you can put the schools that you're interested in. I want to pause because I know that I just gave you all a lot, and see if you have any questions about that.
That was fantastic, Ethan. Very, very detailed.
It's detailed. It's a lot. And I want to, for those of you who are working in a school setting and you're like, oh my gosh, that seems like a lot of work. This is better rather than doing just sort of like good luck, do it. Having a 90-minute session, like after school or something, where you can walk students through is sort of like the ideal way, or even just an hour where you sort of have students do like Coursava and then just pace their schools for part one. And then a separate session where they start to do research, I think could be a great one. So anyway, hopefully that's useful. If you've got questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. Let me kick it back over to you, Candace, for talking about some scholarshiping.
Yeah. So let's go back to the guide and look over again. It's a very detailed and helpful guide that, let's see, there we are. Oh no, sorry you all. Here we are. Okay. But back to the Paying for College guide. So, Ethan eloquently walked us through, of course, list building, which is incredibly important. I think that as students are preparing for college and going through the application process, probably one of the most important one of the most important areas that is oftentimes also not prioritized as much as really understand how to build a good college list that's the right fit for you. So it should be curated. It should be and it should fit your needs. And of course, when we're talking about our first gen students or our low income students or those who fit both of those identities, we have to, again, be very strategic and mindful and really sort of lead with the priorities of cost being a top priority. And then I even saw in the chat where someone had mentioned about, sort of finding those schools that are really going to be good fits for first gen students. And I think we could talk a little bit more about that shortly, because that is very important with being able to find those schools that are going to support students who come from sort of that invisible background, if you will. So let's look at the scholarship basics page. So you all, this is such a really good page for both educators and students. It again is very detailed, as in all of the resources that the college essay guide provides, which is actually really good. I'd actually have more information than less information. And so Ethan does such a fantastic job of just really, really being very clear to the point where you can kind of like give this information to students and families. And so as long as they're reading and walking through it, they can really do this on their own, which is fantastic. Those are the things that we want. We want to be able to empower our students and families and give them resources so that they can do some of this work beyond working with us and really understanding. So scholarshiping, how to scholarship. Okay, so we know that scholarships are great because they don't require that we pay any money back. They're free money that's given. And we understand that scholarships, they come in different forms. So there are, of course, institutional scholarships that are given by the college, and then there are private scholarships that are given. And then, of course, there are scholarships that are given within the community, and they come from different companies. So there's lots of places where you can find scholarships, and there's really scholarships for anyone, in all honesty. So in this guide, it really sort of goes over, like, when you're looking to apply for scholarships, you want to be prepared. That's a whole nother process that involves being strategic and being prepared. And so one of the ways that students, where they can begin this process, is really sort of like looking at all the aspects of their identities. So whether it's gender, whether it's ethnicity background, there's even scholarships for left-handed people, or scholarships for red-headed people, or if there's a particular career pathway that you're interested in, if you identify as LGBTQ or some other sort of identity. There's lots of different, I would say, ways where the student can take stock of themselves and then sort of start in that process. I really think this does a good job with the guide, with going over sort of narrowing down 5 things students do to win multiple scholarships. And this is really sort of differentiating yourself, because we know that a lot of times students are applying to a lot of the same scholarships, especially those really big national scholarships. Those are great. They're awesome. And I encourage students to apply for those scholarships. But we also realize that those scholarships oftentimes are more selective. There are a lot more students who they're competing against. So those are not always the scholarships that students should be really focused on. There are scholarships that may, sorry about that. There are scholarships that may offer less amount of money, but they may increase your chances more of being eligible to be a recipient because the applicant pool is less. So again, just really reinforcing some of the top things that students can do to be strategic as it pertains to research and scholarships, and maybe even increasing their chances is, ensuring, number one, when it comes to scholarships, oftentimes they're going to require an essay. And with that essay, we know that if we're looking to work smarter and not harder, we can look at using some of the essays that we're writing as a senior when we're applying to college. So there's no need to necessarily reinvent the wheel, because oftentimes in a lot of your essays, you may be speaking on some of the things, your college essays, you may be speaking on some of those same topics or having to address those same topics for a scholarship essay. So just ensuring that is an expectation. And I would say writing a good a good essay. And of course, something that students should be mindful of is being able to have someone who can provide you with a letter of recommendation. Again, very similar to college. We know that colleges, there's a nice amount of colleges that require essays and those that require letter of recommendations. Well, that's something as a student, if you're looking to apply to different scholarships, be prepared to also have a letter of recommendation, whether it's coming from a teacher or a counselor, preferably. You pretty much cannot go wrong as it pertains to either one of those two people writing your letter of recommendations for a scholarship. Although recommendations can come from other individuals as well. So it doesn't have to be from those individuals, but usually those are the ones who are writing for colleges, and so they can equally transfer over into your scholarship. Of course, having a resume on hand, this is something that students should always really have as a running resume. In fact, I would say not just students, but even as adults, I think all of us can stand to have a running resume on hand, and something that we're continuously updating the things that we're doing, the learning that's taken place, our experiences as it pertains to anything of our interest or the professional world, and as we're preparing for college, or of course, being able to have list information that's going to be expected of our community engagement activities that we're involved in, how students are spending their time out of the classroom. Have that resume ready and updated, and keep it updated. And then, of course, really just looking at the scholarships that are really going to be the best fit. So, again, while some of the larger scholarships, they're great, they offer a lot of money. And if you are a recipient, that's wonderful. But we know that those tend to be more competitive and more selective, which means that you can have a slimmer chance of being a recipient. So really being mindful, it takes time to apply for scholarships, to look for them, to research them, to apply. And so with that, you want to make sure that you're using your time wisely and looking at the scholarships where that you have a pretty good shot of getting those of being a recipient, even if the dollar amounts are not substantial. It is, whether it's $500 or if it's $5,000, the extra money is always helpful. And then lastly, it just really goes over, again, another tip and to be mindful of is to, tap into people who are around you. So, whether it's your parents, your caregiver, guardian, maybe you have family members, or maybe you have people outside in your community, and asking them, do they know of scholarships? There are a lot of times there are scholarships that are in the community, whether it's a Rotary Club, or if it is through local churches, synagogues, temples, lots of scholarships that are everywhere. And so even for different employers, there are scholarships available. So I think really tapping into your resources and asking people, I'm speaking now, of course, for students or to students, in addition to doing your research online, you can also have conversations with people. And I guarantee if you speak to at least 5 different adults and maybe ask them, hey, does your employer, do they offer a scholarship, or are you aware of any scholarships within a community or local scholarships? I guarantee that probably one person would be able to direct you or point you, or at least maybe perhaps possibly give you some sort of recommendation or referral. And of course, being plugged in and communicating with your school counselor or college counselor as well for these opportunities. So it's just, again, this is a really, really, sorry, let me go up here. It really goes over a lot of information. It talks about private scholarships versus local scholarships. And with the difference between those, again, giving all those examples of some of the things that I mentioned prior or shortly ago on what you should be looking for. It talks about, I think what's really, really important is I'm going to jump down to the institutional scholarship. So as students are applying, as if you're first gen or low income or both, really understanding what is meant by institutional scholarships, because that is part of what is your financial aid as well, and the cost of attendance. So just sort of understanding, what does that all mean, and what are the schools, what are those colleges that actually are generous in that area with being able to provide institutional scholarships. So again, this is a really, really great guide, and one that I definitely am excited to continue to use, and definitely excited to share with my students and families.
Awesome. Thank you. We want to get to Q&A soon, but before we do, I want to share with y'all one more set of resources. I'm going to share my screen now. So Erica Copeland, who works with me at CEG, put together this different spreadsheet of college list building resources for FGLI students. Now, some of y'all in the chat, actually, I should have said this first. Some of y'all in the chat, actually, Hillary sent me a message and said, Ethan, College Express seems great, but they only have a few hundred schools. There's so many colleges that aren't included. So what are some other resources to find lists that fit a specific criterion? This is that resource. So check this out. I'm going to put this in the chat as well. So what this is, and there are a lot of tabs here, so I'm going to actually bring this up a little bit so you can kind of see the tabs here at the bottom. There we go. So what you'll see on this spreadsheet is a list of schools that meet full need with no loans. So what does that mean? That means they're paying your way. If you need $60,000, they're going to give you $60,000 without loans. That's different from this list of schools that meet full need with loans. No loans means you don't have to pay it back. Loans, you're going to have to pay it back. Some schools meet full need, some schools don't. These are the schools that do. In other words, if it doesn't meet full need, sometimes the school will give you a bunch of money, but they might gap you, which means you got to pay $3,000 or something. Here's a list of schools, the ones that Candace mentioned, that give those state regional tuition discounts. So if you were like doing a screenshot on that previous screen, oh, what are these? Here are the links to all of them. And these are the residents, the states that they apply to. Next, we've got a list of, and some of you counselors have probably seen these lists before, but probably not all in one place. These are schools ranked based on social mobility. So it's a different ranking that we're not used to. This is not U.S. News and World Report. Look at the schools that are at the top here. What does that social mobility mean? They're measuring the extent to which a school educates more economically disadvantaged students at lower tuition rates and graduates them into good paying jobs. So you'll see here based on this, and there are links to all of these schools. Isn't that cool? And you'll notice schools like the Cal States are up right here near the top.
Could I jump in really quickly? And
Please.
I think just to mention, as you're talking about this particular topic, social mobility, I think this actually lends really well to it was a great question asked too about, what are some schools that really can genuinely support first-gen students. So I think this is a list. This is not the only list, but this is a resource that can, I think, fit within that bucket of definitely looking at first-gen students and for sure low-income students when we're looking at social mobility.
Yes. Just to keep rolling through this, QuestBridge. Y'all know about QuestBridge. If you don't, get to know QuestBridge. They have an awesome process that they basically, I don't want to explain all of QuestBridge. We need to do a separate webinar all about QuestBridge. But if you don't know about QuestBridge, Google it. But they basically have a group of member schools that offer full scholarships to students. And the application is in September. It's a little bit sooner than November. So make sure that you learn about them sooner rather than later. Another awesome organization is called Posse, which also provides 4 years tuition and fees to undergrad students. For those of you, someone else in the chat was asking about undocumented students or DACA students. This is a list of schools that meet 100% need for undocumented or DACA students. Again, with links to all the schools, I believe. Yep. And then here, in terms of economic diversity, this helps give a sense of how many students from low-income student households attend a particular school. So what percentage of students are receiving Pell Grants? So for example, at Bucknell, 9% of students receive Pell Grants. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom of this list, you'll see that schools like Bloomfield or Jackson State have more like 69 or 71% of students that are receiving Pell Grants. Best bang for the buck. This is from Washington Monthly. And this ranks schools based on social mobility, research, and community. And it's a whole different way of thinking about ranking. So these are some cool schools to check out. And then finally, Scholar Match has what they call their honor roll. These are 375 institutions that offer the most supportive environments for students whose families earn less than $50,000 a year. And they give awesome resources, support, and outcomes for low-income and first-gen youth. So there's a great list here of, 375 schools. But that's not all. There's one more resource I want to share with y'all. This one is a paid resource, and I'm not trying to sell y'all anything, but I am going to give you a coupon code. This is if you know about I'm First, they have a guide. This is more for counselors. Guide to College. I see Candace nodding, and I'll put a link into this. And basically, it's a guide that is specifically tailored to those universities, those colleges that are looking out for first-gen students. You can see the top here, helping first-gen college students make their college dreams a reality. Once you add to cart, let me show you how to do this. You go to the next page, and if you type in the coupon code, let me make this one. If you type in coupon code College Essay Guy, you'll get 30% off. So here, go to checkout, and then just type in, I know y'all know how to do a coupon code, but if you type in College Essay Guy, you'll see that you can get like 30% off. So it's like $30. So this is something that I would recommend for counselors for sure, one to have on your bookshelf. But if you're a student who's like, you're a first-gen student, I want to find schools that are right for me that have great resources. It's a $30 investment, but it's a pretty good one. So those are the resources. And of course, we're going to follow up with all these in a long email. Let's get a couple questions in here. Candace, Jennifer says, I have quite a few students with EFC of 0 that receive no aid from the school other than the Pell Grant. Is that generally because the school has no aid to give, or because the school is choosing to give the aid to other students? What is your sense on that?
That's a good question. I mean, I would say it could be a little bit of both, but I definitely would say that I think there are definitely more schools, or there are some schools who are more generous than others. So this is where, when it comes to being knowledgeable and having resources as such and a place to start, to really be able to, again, strategically look at those schools that are going to be generous in that area. This is where this can be really helpful, because it's like unless you're making all the decisions here, it's really hard to know at times what is going, why certain decisions are being made the way that they are.
Yeah. Denise asks, if a student receives a scholarship, does that decrease the amount that they pay based on their net price calculator, or does the amount of the scholarship get deducted from their financial aid reward?
Yeah, so in some instances, students who do receive scholarships, then they do have to report the scholarship to the university. And this is, of course, after they've been admitted and received their awards, they have to report it, or it's reported to the college, and they may sort of like adjust a little bit of their aid. But that's not always the case. So it really depends.
Stephanie asks, what can students do now who have been gapped? So by gapped, the term, just for everybody, that term is like if you receive just, all financial aid, but you don't have $500, you don't have $2,000 or something like that. So what advice would you give to Stephanie or Stephanie's students? I don't know if Stephanie's a student counselor, if they have been gapped.
Yeah. So, of course, scholarshiping, that is a year-round endeavor. It is. I don't believe like there's just a window to do it. I don't believe you should only do it in senior year. That's an ongoing year-round task. So that is always something that a student can, of course, lean into. Does it always happen? No, but that's something that they can do. Also, students can have conversations with the financial aid office as well, or write a letter, or see about negotiating at times. These are conversations to be had, and depending on, sometimes our situations change from year to year. And so, I encourage my students and families, if it's a school that they really, really would like to go to, and perhaps, they could use a little bit more assistance in some areas. Let's first see if we can have that conversation with the financial aid office.
Yeah, I'm sharing in a link here. This is useful for this year for a few more days, but there's a link to a guide that we put together on how to write a financial aid appeal letter. So if you are a student who's like actively doing that, like Hannah said, reach out. There is a human whose job it is to think about these things and work through them. Who knows if there's money still left. So it's a thing that you want to do sooner rather than later. But there's a little guide with an example, simple example about how to do an appeal letter. I've been back and forth with a couple students this last few weeks, as they're writing their appeal letters, trying to, figure out, should I mention that this other school gave me this offer or not? All of that's covered in the guide. Well, Candace, I want to thank you for your time and energy, for being here, and all the work that you do with your students at Laces and nationally. Candace is kind of a big deal. She's on some boards and some stuff. She kind of downplayed it, but thank you for all the work you do for our profession and for being here today.
Likewise, Ethan, thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for all that you do for so many students and families and us as educators. I'm always thrilled to be able to see you, work alongside you, and of course, be able to use your information. So Ethan and I, we go back about 10 years now, and, it's just, always exciting to see you.
Well, thanks.
Thank you all
so
much.
Thank you all for being here. We'll follow up in an email with all the resources. And stay tuned. We've got lots more coming. Quick plug. Tomorrow, we've got a big session for counselors who have large caseloads. If you want help knowing how do I plan my workshop, working on the personal statement and personal insight questions, we've got a whole workshop. In fact, Ashley, before we log off, would you just share that link out with folks so that they can sign up for that webinar? That would be super awesome. And I might just hang out for like another minute because Ashley's not going to have to go scramble and find that link. But basically tomorrow we're going to walk through our WACAC session. So this is a quick detour, but Hannah Lim, who works on my team, and David Cha, who works at a Title I school here in Los Angeles, we put together a 3-hour pre-conference session. And rather than give you like the whole 3 hours, we've brought it down to like 75-minute, we're going to present, there we go, 25 minutes each on how do you put together a workshop. This is for counselors in particular, especially counselors with large caseloads. And we're going to talk about all the things from like, how do you plan the workshop, to how has David, done his workshop, to I'm also going to be talking about how do you give essay feedback in a quick way that doesn't involve meetings for those of you counselors who are interested. So anyway, we'll also show that link, but you probably need to click it now because by the time you get the email tomorrow, it's going to be happening tomorrow afternoon. So click the link now, and I'm going to give you all 10 more seconds to do that. And thanks, y'all. Thanks for being here. And we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye, everyone.